Good morning, everyone. My name is Barclay Hagan. I am with OnPoint Consulting, and welcome to our Sage 300 CRE data structure webinar. We have Mike Pazinski that's going to present for us this morning. Just wanted to let you know we will have hopefully have a little bit of time for questions at the end. So if you have questions, feel free to type those into the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will address those at the end of the session. And with that, Mike, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Barclay. Okay, so hey everybody, thanks for being here. This is the second in a series of report writing and other ways of sessions and other ways to get more out of your system. You know, all companies, even OnPoint, we're transforming as we move through what's happening in the market, and it's just our systems need to work for us now more than ever. And feed us and give us information as we make decisions on our structure and what we're going to look like as we come out of the downturns. This one's an interesting topic. I was reflecting on this the other day. I spent about 10 years at Timberline user group conferences and Sage Summit and all those things, teaching Crystal and Report Designer and Access for Timberline. And I read an article about 10 years later. Well, 10 years ago. So I've been doing it for about 10 years, and about 10 years ago, I read an article talking about how people, when they write reports, they spend such a fraction of their time writing the report, and most of the time is around understanding the data or working with data that's maybe not normalized or the way they need it exactly to write the report. And that's, I came up with this curriculum back about 10 years ago, did it for the first time at a TUG conference, and there was a lot of attendees. You got to know your data, don't you? How can you possibly write a report or do customizations or interfaces if you don't know your data? Once you know your data, the rest of it's easy. And so it's kind of a knock in the head for me. We should have been doing this a long time ago. We're going to go fast today, and of course the recording will be made available. If you have any questions at all, please, and you think of them after the session, please email us and we'll provide that information. Happy to answer any questions. So Sage data structure, if I can figure out how to work PowerPoint. Our objectives today are to understand the flow of data and how it's stored in your Sage system. And of course, I'm preaching to the choir here. I understand, give you better period end efficiency and just general efficiency as you troubleshoot and understand where things may be. Of course, it'll help with report writing and customizations, as we said. Okay, so we're going to talk about the structure of the data. We're going to talk about the files and the types of files in your system. We'll talk about the flow of this data through Sage, and then get into table structure and where stuff is stored. And we're going to focus on the core modules here, all right? Okay, quick thing about terms. In Sage, you've got what Sage calls a company folder. This is where your data is stored. Unless you've mapped out data, which you can do, your data is all under your company folder, unless you've mapped it out, all right? The term database then is basically the accumulation of all of those tables so that they're all accessed by the program and accessible by you, right? And there's relationships between those tables that we'll talk about, right? The term file, a file could be a Word doc, a file could be an Excel doc or sheet. A file for this purpose is a collection of one or more tables that are stored together in a file. The writers of the program decided what the makeup of the file is, all right? For instance, you've got a new.jct and a current.jct. Those are files, and then they've got different tables and elements in them. A table, think about a table as an Excel spreadsheet, all right? It's just a table that organizes the pieces of information into rows and columns. For example, you've got an AP vendor table, right? That has all your vendor master file information, as well as more that we'll talk about. All right, you've got records. A record is simply a row of information in a table. Think about an Excel spreadsheet. You've got an Excel spreadsheet that's a table, and it's made up of rows, right? Well, each row is called a record in a database. For example, vendor 100 here. And then the concept of fields. A field is a piece of information within the record. So that within your vendor table, you've got a vendor ID and a vendor name and a vendor address. Those are three different fields within the record or table. So to add even more confusion in Sage, excuse me, they use the term record to refer to a table. So if your eyes aren't rolled back in your head already, that's a heads up, and we'll talk about that in a bit. A little bit about files, all right? In Sage, your core application has two types of files. If you don't remember anything from today, burn this into memory. Each core application has a master file and then a collection of detail or transaction files. That's so important for report writing. The master file, for instance, your master GLM, general ledger, it stores two types of information. It's got static data, the account number, the account name, the account type. Static stuff, that doesn't change, all right? And then it also has transaction files, okay? So when you enter into your system, you're actually creating transactions that get moved as you post in an archive. So two different types of files, master and transaction. And the transactions are what you create as you process in your system. All right, a little bit more about file types. In that master file that we talked about, you've got your setup stuff, you've got accumulated totals, like in your master GLM, you've got month to date and year to date and life to date, and then there are additional tables that create, every month of the year, every period, what those accumulated totals are. Okay? If you wanted to report on your trial balance, you'd pull it on your master file. Just give me a listing of the accounts and their accumulated totals as of right now. That'd be like a trial balance. You also have transaction files. The new is unposted entries. So when you make entries into Sage, you're creating them in a new file. They're unposted, okay? When you post, that exact information simply gets moved out of the new and into the current file, all right? So the current file is your posted stuff. And then your history is what you've archived, what you've moved to history. So from a report writing standpoint, somebody says to you, can I get this piece of information? The first thing you're thinking is, well, is it static? Can I get it off of month to date or life to date or job to date or whatever? If it's static and you don't need it date sensitive, you're looking at the master files. Whereas if it's date sensitive, you want transaction files because they've got every transaction in your system, and they may say, I want stuff from November 20th, 2020 through January 31st, 2021. You've got transactions to house all of that activity. Now you're writing a report off your transaction file. And then you start thinking and you ask your users, are we going to want unposted activity? Do you want it so current that you want it whether data is posted or not? If you do, you want the new file as well as the current. And then you're thinking, all right, this especially holds true with job costs or even payroll. Do you want to look at history transactions? And if the potential is there, then yes, you want to grab your new and your current and your history. Whereas if someone says, no, I just need stuff that's updated, I'm not worried about archive stuff, you can grab it just off the current. That of all of the calls that we got in the call center when we were supporting Crystal in the call center, this was one of the biggest areas. All right, so that concept, so that we can get through this, that concept follows the same for job cost. It follows for accounts payable. All right, it follows for payroll. Now, if you have any questions about this, or if you're ever writing a report or doing something with customizations and you just want to throw some ideas against the wall or check your thinking, please call us. We have a saying, two sets of eyes on everything. So please give us a holler if you're thinking about it. Well, any of these concepts, and you just want to get a double check. It gets through payroll. Now, the flow of data, if you've been on Timberline, showing my age here, if you've been on Timberline or Sage 300 for a long time, you're probably familiar with this. But when you're entering, your transactions are first written to a new file in the application of origin. So let's just say you're in AP, all right? You're in the new file. Now, when you post AP, your transactions in AP go from new to current, all right? So now they're in the current accounts payable transactions, all right? And the AP master file is accumulated, okay? And you've also then, the act of posting, you created and sent entries to interfacing modules. So obviously you've created entries in general ledger and job cost. Those entries flow to the new files in general ledger and to the new files in job cost. All right. This next one here, we get a lot of calls here also. The post and interface settings determine whether those files that landed in GL and that landed in job cost, whether they post automatically or manually. Okay. A lot of people, and this is what we recommend, we recommend you do it all automatically so that when AP posted, went from new to current in AP, it sent transactions to GL, go ahead and just make your settings so GL posts automatically, goes from new to current. Now, if there's a compelling reason to not do that, it might make sense. Maybe there's an interface or maybe there's some sort of an approval or something else. But for a lot of folks, just post it automatically so you're not messing around with posting multiple modules. And AO here is application of origin. Those posting settings that I referenced, this is an accounts payable. So there's two concepts here. One is when you finish an entry session in AP, do you want the system to post automatically? All right. If there's not a review, if the operator has the authority to repost and there is no review, just get her done, and I'd make it automatic. If it's manual, you'll have an opportunity to go back, look at your items, maybe make any changes, and then update. So this is within the module. Then these little guys down here, this is module by module. When AP sends those entries to cash management, for instance, automatically post. When it sends them to equipment or GL, automatically post. That's what this setting is. If for any reason there's a business use case to not do that, you would set this to modules, to manual. And this is within the post and interface settings in AP. You've got the same thing in payroll, for instance. When payroll posts, what do you want to happen in the other modules? So this is module by module. A little visual here, just a picture's worth 1,000 words. When you posted in GL, when you entered in GL, things are in the new file. After you post, your master files accumulate, your job, your life to date, your month to date, your year to date activities, they all accumulate, and you've literally moved from new to current in GL. All right, and we're repeating what we said, just a visual here. If you archive, you're moving transactions out of your current GLT into your history GLT. AP, let's go to, AP is a similar concept. Job cost is a similar concept. Let's do payroll. I like the example in payroll. I think it's just a bit more comprehensive and straightforward. So you're entering time. It's all in new. You're processing checks. Everything's looking great. You finally update your payroll. Okay. When you update payroll, you update your master files in payroll. 2, move those time entries and everything else and the checks and all that into the current. And then you send entries to the new GLT and to the new JCT. This isn't quite right. This is when you cut checks. This puppy gets updated. Well, there's a missing step, but I won't complicate it. Now they're new here. Now, if your settings were that there's automatic posting in these two modules, they would go right to the current GLT, right to the current job cost transactions, and you don't have to do anything there. So I wasn't sure on this PowerPoint. I thought, well, maybe I should whittle it down so that we just cover the concepts in the time that we have. I thought, no, I'll leave these other examples in here because you may want to reference those for something specific at your company. I think we're all familiar with this. We saw this when we first implemented Sage Timberline, but it's talking about what modules send transactions where. The one thing I want to mention is that GL only receives information. It does not send it out anywhere else in Sage. It just gets information from the other modules. Okay, tables. We're gonna shift gears here a little bit. Each of your files contains at least one table. Think of a table as an Excel spreadsheet. This is an example for general ledger, okay? There's a batch and there's a transaction and there's a general table. These are tables in that file, right? So in your master GLM, then you've got this information coming from different tables, accounts, activity, the base, custom fields, budget, blah, 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 okay? Now remember that if you get into Sage refers to those as records. All right, and we're going to give an example here. I could have used this throughout my entire life. Oops. So if you're in Sage and you're printing the data dictionary, and I'm going to show you how to do that as soon as we're finished here, you can get printouts of the dictionary for the different tables. All right. So we've got a GL transaction table and a GL account table. Okay. So when you print this out, it's talking about record names, GL transaction record. A GL transaction, this is the table with the fields that are in the table. Think of that as that Excel spreadsheet. The records are when you add a new GL transaction. Those are records. It's like adding a row in an Excel spreadsheet. So as long as you just know that and you don't get all wrapped around the axle on this terminology, you're okay. Because for some folks, we come back to this, that might have saved you hours or even days trying to figure all this out. But this data dictionary, he's one of your best friends. He's telling you the table, the GL transaction table, and then the fields that are in that. And this other one, it's the GL account table, and then the fields that are in that table. You couldn't ask for more in any program than to lay it out like this. We work with other construction ERP systems, and I got to tell you, I wish they were as laid out as Sage did. They did a great job there. To get to that, I'm in Sage. To get to that data dictionary, you'll go to Sage, and I'm going to pop over to Report Designer. And if you want to print those available fields or that data dictionary within Report Designer, go to Tools, and then go to Available Fields. And if you're taking notes and all that, you'll have the recording of this. I wouldn't worry a whole lot about notes, more the concepts. And then you get a listing of all of the tables that are in Timberline, Sage 300. It says records. That's kind of where we were going before. So if you wanted let me pop on down to GL. If you wanted the GL account table, and you also wanted the GL transaction table, all right, you could highlight both, hit OK. Include information for ODBC reporting. We covered that in other sessions. I won't get into all that now. I'm just going to print preview. And boom, you've got your data dictionary. Here's your GL account table with the fields that are in it. And then if I scroll down, yeah, it's still all those accumulators. By the way, anything that starts with a C kind of confusing is cache basis. So here's my cache basis feature activity 4, all right, versus if it doesn't have a C, it's just micro basis, not just, but it's micro basis. Anyway, here's the transaction table, all right, and all of the fields that are in it. So when you're writing a report, you're wondering, where can I get this information? Well, there you go. Print this out and see if it's in these tables. When I was an end user and I started report writing, I printed out the ones that were most commonly used, and I highlighted the name and the fields that I tended to think I would use the most, and it just really helped me. I think the act of printing it out, the act of highlighting, just helped kind of drill into my brain where this data was. Let's get rid of him. All right. In terms of the table structure, I think we've talked about a lot of this. In terms of helping you out with report writing, this is kind of getting pretty granular, and we would do this in the TUG conferences and in the summit and insights and all of that. For the purposes of this scope, this is probably going a little too deep, but I left it in here so that you can reference it later and then call us or email us if you have questions. All right, but for instance, your budget, your general ledger budget, is in your master GLN. Okay. All right, I'm just going to go back. I'm going to get through this record structure. I don't know how much this would help you in report writing. So now we're into job cost. You know, where are my change orders? Change orders are a funny animal. Change orders can start in job cost. That's the old way. And then Sage moved the change order process to the contract module. That was kind of short-lived. Wasn't a whole lot of user acceptance there or adoption. And then it's, of course, now it's in the project management module. So this may or may not apply to you in terms of where things start. All right, we're just going to go through this record structure and move on here in our time allowed. Here's the payroll structure. If like I say, if you want to deep dive this, you have any questions about report writing, what you want to accomplish specifically, you'll have access to this. And it's a reference guide for you. And then again, please just give us a ring. I'm happy to help you. Let's get through payroll. Okay, so why was all of this important? Well, if you're troubleshooting or doing month-end reconciliations, you have to know where your data is, right? So it's just obvious. If you're doing report design, you have to know your data. Same thing with formula writing. You have to know where the formula accesses fields. And just as importantly, when the information arrives in those fields. Now, it's also important so you have access to that through security. You may not see something and know that it's there. You know, it's look at it in a data dictionary. Maybe you reference this guide, and maybe there's a security access. And then also then for file maintenance, moving or archiving. How are we doing on time? We're doing pretty good. So in recap, we talked about the structure, talked about the files and the types of the files, new or master files and transactions. We talked about the flow, which the automation of that flow is controlled in your settings in each module. And then briefly went through table structure and the information that's stored within. I think the most important thing, the most important takeaway would be understanding the difference between master and transaction, understanding the flow on the transactions from new to current to history, knowing that up front when you're doing something, you have to be thinking, is this date sensitive, or is it just based on static information, or do I want date prompts? If it's static, you're looking at master files. If you want date prompts to make it date sensitive, you're looking at transaction tables. If you're getting anything out of this, again, that's so important. Oops. All right. Barclay, I was just looking at those pictures. Barclay, I've been rambling. And are there any questions that have popped up?
No questions at this point.
Okay. Well, I scanned some of the names that were in here. Gosh, it's been a long time since I've seen some of you. I hope everybody's well and your families are well, and the companies you work for are doing well or see a path. Thank you for joining us. And before I hand back off to Barclay, like I say, open invitation. If you have questions, we're here to help. This, people in our position. I've not been in your positions. Controller, CFO, report writing, template administrator, those things. We can contribute now more than ever as companies are looking to the future and thinking about where they may want to go or where they're making or losing money. We need to know our data and how to mine that data so we can just provide quick information and move on. Anyway, with that, Barclay, I'll hand it off to you.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to say thank you for being here. And Mike, if you want to go forward one slide. On the screen, you'll see our email address. If you do have those questions, you can email us at clientcare@onpoint-software.com. Also, to keep up to date on upcoming events, of course, you can go to our website or follow us on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. And also, if there are any additional session topics that you'd like to see, please feel free to email those as well. Otherwise, everybody have a good afternoon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Barclay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye all.